Well, the fourth GOP debate took place this past week, and while Donald Trump wasn't there again, the folks who are battling for second place behind him certainly were going at it. And joining me to talk a little bit about what we saw in that debate, as well as Donald Trump's town hall with Sean Hannity earlier this week, is Nathan Gonzales from Inside Elections, good friend of the podcast, Faith Nation, CBN in general. Nathan, how are you? Thank you for coming back on the DC Debrief.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I guess it meant that the last few times went okay, so I'm always happy to get that invitation back.
Absolutely, it went more than okay, but now that means the pressure's on. You know, game's been raised, bar's been set, so we gotta creep above it here. And
there we go.
Let's start with the fact that on Wednesday night you had four candidates. You had Nikki Haley, you had Ron DeSantis, you had Christie, and you had Vivek Ramaswamy, all there on stage. Of course, Donald Trump not there, the guy who's leading them by 20, 30, 40 points, depending on which poll and which state you're looking at. And at the start, it looked like Nikki Haley was almost acting as the front runner of the fourth. She really came under some vicious attacks from Ramaswamy. I'm saying vicious attacks in her mind, I would imagine. Vivek Ramaswamy holding up a little thing that he wrote on a piece of paper saying Nikki equals corrupt. You had Ron DeSantis attacking her early in this debate. Does it seem to you as if she has risen to be the Trump alternative in the GOP primary right now?
Well, one way to identify who has the momentum and who is the perceived front runner is to look at others' actions, right? And we can tell by the actions of Ramaswamy and DeSantis that they believe Haley is a threat. Now, a lot of this debate felt very familiar because you had candidates attacking someone who's in third place, trying to get up to second place while largely leaving the first place candidate out of the crosshairs. Trump did receive some criticism, particularly from Governor Christie, but it just feels like while things change, everything stays the same, and we just creeping closer and closer to Iowa and New Hampshire and the rest of the primary states with Trump as the clear front runner.
I want to talk to you about what Christie had to say about Trump and the fact that he really is still the only one of the four candidates who is really attacking the former president. And I think it almost felt like he was frustrated with his fellow contenders on stage. There was a point where DeSantis wouldn't answer a question as to whether or not he thought Trump was unfit to be president. And Christie called him on. He's like, this is a simple question. This is a yes or no. I'm the only one who's willing to say that he is unfit to be president. And what I don't understand is, we're all acting on stage here like we are competing with just each other for this nomination when there's a guy who's dozens of points ahead of us in virtually every poll. There's a clear front runner, and none of you guys are taking him on. I'm the only one doing it. Felt to me like Christie was a little frustrated with the fact that he's the only guy of all the Republicans, really since this got started, who has been hammering Trump hard.
Yeah, I think we saw a difference between the candidates on the stage, meaning Christie, who's kind of playing as if he has nothing to lose. All right. I think he wants to win. He wants to be president of the United States, but he also realizes it's going to be tough. And so he's delivering a message, while the other candidates are still believe that, want to win the nomination, and they covet Trump's supporters. So they are reticent to get crossways with Trump in order to, cut off their ability to get those supporters. And, and it's what I wish we could go back in time and take Christie's message and have Governor DeSantis deliver it starting at the beginning of the year, right? DeSantis wins a huge reelection in 2022, jumps right into the presidential race, and just goes on the attack against Trump. I'm not sure that it ends exactly, it ends the same way, but I think it would be different with DeSantis as the messenger rather than Christie.
Because DeSantis was seen as a legitimate presidential candidate right from jump, whereas Christie's always been kind of the outsider. And the other thing that I was thinking of is when it's just one person who's levying the attacks against Donald Trump, if you're a Republican voter, you can dismiss it as saying this guy's got an axe to grind. This guy's got something personal with Trump. But when the rest of the candidates are all equal in their vociferousness going after Trump, then I would imagine as a Republican voter, you stop and you say to yourself, are these guys onto something? And that leads me to my next question. Do you think that as we get closer to Iowa and New Hampshire, that these other candidates, DeSantis, Haley, and probably never Ramaswamy, but specifically Haley and DeSantis, do you think that they're going to start getting a little bit more aggressive in going after Donald Trump?
I think they have to, but I don't know that they will. Right? Those are two. Those are
Yeah.
two. Those are two. And right now, the focus is on Iowa and how many. There's always the talk of how many tickets are there out of Iowa, right? How many reasonable places, or how high do you have to finish to really be able to move on? And so that's why we see that fighting, because everyone's trying to be the non-Trump alternative with the hope that Trump falters somehow, and then they are there in the wings waiting to capture that support.
Who do you think came out of this fourth debate with the most momentum?
I don't know. I don't know that anybody really did, John. We have to wait a few. We have to wait a few days and even a couple of weeks to figure that out. There was the Wall Street Journal poll that came out today that had a national poll that had Nikki Haley pulling into second place. It should go without saying, but we should remind folks that doesn't include. People didn't have a time to digest this debate that responded to that poll. So it's going to take at least another week or so to get polling from people who may have watched the debate and then started to maybe change their mind.
Did anybody say anything at the debate that surprised you at this point? And if not, do you anticipate, is there anything any of these candidates can say that would surprise you at this point?
Well, actually, I shouldn't be surprised, but I'm going to say Ramaswamy and January 6th and other things that he's really going down a trail of, I'm going to call them conspiracy theories about January 6th being an inside job. And
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'm surprised to see someone knowing the footage and watching what happened and being on the Capitol grounds, not inside the Capitol, on the Capitol grounds on January 6th, and then to hear a major party candidate from on a national stage start to, I believe, whitewash what went on and diminish what went on. I was surprised to hear it, John. This might be my last podcast with you, but I was that was
Never.
I was saddened and surprised by that.
Yeah. After the debate, a spokesperson for Trump posted something on Truth Social, essentially saying these debates are a waste of money and a waste of time, and that it's time for the Republican Party to rally around the former president as he makes this push for a second term in office. Do you anticipate any more GOP debates? And what's left that's going to come after this debate, if not?
Well, I don't think there's any scheduled by the RNC right now. I think there's talk among some media outlets about trying to get more. I mean, the media has an interest. They want to get viewers. They want to get people clicking and tuning in and stuff. So there might be, but I don't believe anything's on about January. Iowa is coming up on January 15th. So when you incorporate the holidays, that is a short runway to get to January 15th. Beyond that, we'll see what the primary even looks like. If Trump ends up winning Iowa and New Hampshire and in the other early states, then they're really the race will be functionally over, and we're just going through the motions through the rest of the primary calendar.
And as I'm looking on Real Clear Politics, they do a good totaling of recent polling. And you can look at the national polling, and I think that's instructive. But specifically looking at the state-by-state polling, I mean, in Iowa, you've got there was a Trafalgar poll that was done in early December where Trump was up 45-22 on DeSantis, with Haley in third place at 19. In New Hampshire, you have Trump averaging 45%. Haley's at like 18%. Even in South Carolina, Nikki Haley's home state, she trailed Trump in this in a Winthrop poll done in mid-November, 52-17. And so that's with Trump not even participating in these debates. It's been a smart strategy. I mean, they haven't really been able to land any punches on him because he has not been there. So there wouldn't really be any reason to think he would attend any future debates.
Exactly. If he had suffered somehow in the polls after not appearing at the first debate, maybe he starts to show up. He shows up at the second one or in subsequent debates. But there really hasn't been any consequence for him not showing up, and so you just see him continue to play by that. But John, I've been looking at Iowa specifically because it's the first one, and we hear a lot about previously the polls were wrong and voters in Iowa decide late, and so I went and looked, right, and at this point in 2015. Ahead of the 2016 caucuses, Ted Cruz was leading Trump by a few points in Iowa. And Ted Cruz ended up beating Trump by a few points in Iowa. So then let's go further. Let's go a little bit further back to 2012. Rick Santorum ended up winning the Iowa caucuses. And that was, I would say, a legitimate surprise. But he ended up winning with 25%. But he started you could see a bump in December ahead of those polls. And there was also not a clear frontrunner like Trump. I mean, Trump is a de facto incumbent. That's a different dynamic than what was happening in 2012. And then 2008, Mike Huckabee won the Iowa caucuses, and in late November he won it with 34%. In late November of the year before, he was at 29%. So you could already see Huckabee's rise. And so I say all that if DeSantis or if Nikki Haley was really going to surge and take this thing in Iowa, we should start to see that now. And when we zoom out, John, this is one of the things I'm really struggling with the idea that maybe in Iowa things are different than what the polling says, because for 7 years I've been conditioned to say that Trump is being underestimated in the polls. But now the people that are saying, well, actually DeSantis, his ground game, it's going to come through. It's like, so now you're telling me that the polls are overestimating Trump. Now, right. I'm open to it, but I'm just saying for 7 years, I've been told that he's been underestimating the polling. And now all of a sudden, no, actually, he's overestimated. Well, I guess we're going to find out in 39 days.
Right. And it's one thing if he's being overestimated by 5 to 10 points. It's another thing if he's got a 25, 30 point lead in these different polls. So and we're talking about Donald Trump. And during this primary season, we've been talking a lot about the other candidates because we know who Donald Trump is from obviously his time in the presidency before, the years afterwards. He has never stopped being in the news except for maybe 9 months after he first was out of office. And so we're learning. The reason we've been talking about Haley and DeSantis and Ramaswamy and Christie and everybody else is because they're new. We're learning more about them and their policies and how they're engaging and interacting with each other. But we haven't been focusing as much on the things that Trump is saying, the things that Trump is doing. And it sure looks like he's going to be the nominee. On Tuesday night, he did a town hall with Sean Hannity on Fox News. And one of the things, really the headline from that, is that he was asked by Hannity about some of the critiques or the reporting that say that he is going to essentially be a dictator when he takes his second turn in office, and was asking, do you plan to be? Are you going to be a dictator when you take office? And he says, on day one, I will be. Obviously, Democrats have been pushing back pretty hard at that. What was your take on what he said and what he meant by that?
I believe him. John, I think, Trump is interesting because sometimes his appearances are viewed or described as stand-up comedian, stand-up routines and stuff. And there is a level of where he's poking fun at people and stuff, but he doesn't just joke around. He's not that type of person. And I think we need to believe him. And I don't think people have wrestled enough with what a second Trump term would look like, because this comment is not in a vacuum, right? There's a story in Axios today where it talked about the type of people that he might have in his administration or in the cabinet, and exacting revenge and purging members of the media or the government that are disloyal. This is I think should be concerning because it fits in with who Trump is, right? Trump, it's very personal. Politics is personal to Trump. And if you get sideways with him, he's going to come after you. And if he's president of the United States, he's going to have more at his disposal, I guess, to exact the type of revenge that he is in. And I think he looks fondly on strong leaders. Vladimir Putin, Kim Jong-un, his relationship with them, I think there's an affinity for the type of power that they exhibit, and it's not hard to see how he might try to exhibit similar power.
Yeah, he's talked about President Xi in recent weeks as a man of granite. He's a very smart man made of granite and running circles around the Biden administration. And so, again, to your point, that's generally speaking how he has referred to President Xi. One of the other things that he said with Hannity, talking about President Biden's age, and certainly the age of the president and how he looks on the campaign trail, and really, he's not on a campaign trail really, but in his White House events, he certainly at times looks his age. And one of the things that Trump and Republicans have been hitting on is whether or not Biden's going to be mentally and physically up to the job of another 4 years in the White House, which I think most people would understand is a fair criticism. Donald Trump, just a few years younger than President Biden, and he has had missteps on the campaign trail over these last few weeks. He has mistaken what city that he's in. He has confused Biden with Obama, and he has explained those away. He has tried to explain those away and give some reasons for them. But I guess, do you think that once the primary is over and Donald Trump most likely is the nominee, now you're going to see he's not just going to have to play to a Republican crowd. There's going to be a whole group of independents and Republicans out there who may not be enamored, who might be looking for a reason to vote some other way, to look at Trump's age. And does it increase the pressure on Trump to be more perfect, for lack of a better word, when he's on the campaign trail and saying the things that he's saying?
Well, Trump is always going to benefit from a comparison to Biden. That even though there might be questions about Trump's health or his ability to serve a second term, if it's compared to Biden, he's going to be younger, right? He's going to look better and look younger compared to Biden. If Trump were running against Gavin Newsom or Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan, then I think we'd be talking more about Trump's age. But Trump also has the luxury of, he says so many things that are off the wall, or just says so many things in general, including things that are off the wall, that they kind of get dismissed, right? If President Biden got on a stage today and started talking about water pressure in shower heads and how concerning that was, people think, well, Biden is, he's off the rails here. But if Trump does it, it's like, oh, well, that's just Trump being Trump, or it's there's a different standard. Biden is being held to a different standard than Trump, but that's, whether it's fair or unfair, that is the political reality. And in the general election, well, we're talking about the general election, but with independent voters, I think Democrats have to cast as much doubt in voters' minds about a second Trump term, including maybe his personal ability, in order to make sure that voters who want change because they're dissatisfied with President Biden, that they can't vote for Trump because they don't believe he's a credible enough alternative.
Well, we're going to be talking a little bit more as the weeks go on here about what Trump might do in his second term, some of the things that he has said, and start to focus in on that. And of course, obviously, if this race gets tighter, if there's a surprise in Iowa, New Hampshire, or South Carolina that shakes things up, we'll certainly be able to revisit that. But certainly, I think in a lot of ways, like you said, Trump is under the radar. Incredibly, in terms of some of the things that he is saying, as we are focusing on these other candidates. But for all the things going on with the election cycle right now, you're going to want to make sure that you're catching everything that Nathan Gonzales is doing over at Inside Elections. You can see him on CBN's Faith Nation. You can catch him on our website, cbnnews.com, whenever he is on one of our shows, as well as on this fine podcast as well. Nathan, thank you for coming back on the DC Debrief. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, John. Always fun.